Hi, I'm Ashley Adamson. It's been a while since I've checked in, and a part of that has been because I lost my voice for 4 weeks. And even if I just kind of calm myself down right now, like not my speaking voice, my just internal voice, it kind of goes right around here where I can speak comfortably. I don't know if you're trans, but if you are a trans woman, voice is something that we struggle with. And it's something that I'm still struggling with. Apparently, I damaged my voice in a voice lesson because I was using my false vocal cords too much. And so then I was mute for 4 weeks and I lost my voice. And I learned a lot about myself through that experience. And I also used a lot of Apple accessibility features. So if you are losing your voice because you're doing voice feminization or something, check out the live speech feature on your iPhone. But this is not about losing my voice. I'm just kind of doing some preamble of like why my voice feels raspy. It's not fully working yet, and I'm going through some voice lessons to actually learn how to use my real vocal cords, which is like a really funny concept to me because I've just been using my false vocal cords for the past like 5 years. Like, fuck. So yeah, where am I at today? I'm kind of in a formless place, and I wanted to talk about just like a bunch of formless things. The reason why I think this is important for you is because this notion of form and formlessness is probably one of the most important concepts to understand and use as a symbol and anchor into your own experience. It's a tool to unlock a lot of magical states, to remove your anxiety, to make things that you thought impossible possible, and to allow your body to just like do the work that it needs to do when it needs to do it. So I wanted to talk about this concept because it just came up a bunch of different times dealing with my own anxiety about having a bottom surgery soon. I had bottom surgery in about 5 weeks now, countdown. And so there's bottom surgery. Then there's just like perception, right? Like people perceive things. Oh yeah, politics, like fuck, like what's going on with politics? So it's like we have this far left, far right, and everyone's arguing over this and that. And there's not enough perspective in the media conversation of like, well, can we kind of find common ground? And I think it's a lot to do with perception and attachments to form and what they think. Because when you abstract away like all of the issues that people are debating about, we're all effectively in the same class. We're all not uber rich. We all don't have $100 million or more. And we want the best for people, right? But like the value system and all of that just goes way out of whack. So like with that, there's also like this practice of formlessness and form. And so I just kind of want to touch on all of these different things. In meditation this morning, I also entered what I would call like a formless state. And by doing that, it allowed my body to just heal and enable what it needed to do. And I think I'll probably need to be in this kind of chrysalis, formless state when I'm going through surgery as well. So that's where I'm at. Now let me talk about this concept of formless form and formlessness, and practicing this is really about like what you are attached to, what you are perceiving something is, and then what it actually is. There's moments where you see people arguing and you can see that they're both seeing things in their own way. They're putting their own shade of what they're seeing, and they're arguing over that. But you're like, it's neither this, neither that. That's kind of what we're getting at here, right? we have projections. So you have this natural thing, the RAS, the reticular activating system, is a part in your brain that filters out information that it considers irrelevant and then saves your energy so that you only look at new things that seem relevant. So in people's belief systems, if they've been consuming social media that tells them to think one way or the other way, they'll make all of these subtle judgments about their perception, and then they will kind of deem irrelevant other information. And so what you kind of have when you have like far left and far right people fighting is they've deemed irrelevant information and created projections and perceptions and beliefs on what they think the world is, and they consider everything else irrelevant. So then when you get into these conversations with these kind of political parties or whatever, they're just not seeing each other. They're not like evaluating for like a higher truth. They're really just interested in their own truth. And yeah, it's been frustrating to watch America go through all of this, especially because I'm living in LA right now. So it's been causing me a lot of anxiety watching politics, because in my household, everyone watches CNN. And I'm like, what the fuck? Guys, can we stop watching CNN? Like, this is so stressful. I just want to eat my dinner. But I'm okay with it. I'm okay. It's just, I try to get out of that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Would you be interested in me making some political commentary videos? Because I feel like I'm trans, and so that automatically puts me somewhere on the left. But like, I don't feel like I'm a far left trans person. I feel like I'm a person that wants to find commonality and shared ground and understandings. Like, I don't really agree with putting all of this, what are they called? Those men that dress as women but aren't identifying as women. Those queens, whatever they're called. Fuck, what are they called? Drag queens, like, fuck. Putting drag queens in schools to talk about I really think that's not okay. I really don't think that we as people were like, yeah, drag queens reading stories to children is a good idea. I think that's a plant from like a think tank to create oppositionality between value systems of people that are far right and far left. I think that this is a false dichotomy between the two, and that there's like no actual substance here. It's just we're creating substance to argue over, because it's better to argue over that than to realize that both people are poor and not making enough and are having a hard time getting by because their housing costs are too expensive, or that they can't find a job, or their job doesn't pay them enough. And if we just talked about that and we're like, oh, you're dealing with the same issue, but it's just in a different state, you know, there'd be a lot more reforms and maybe a lot more corporate responsibility that would have to happen. But that's just not going to happen, because people consume what they're given through these media platforms, and it's all being fed through this manufactured system of like false information and also manufactured information. Anyways, would you want me to talk about stuff like that? Because I can go off on that topic. Yeah, so formlessness and form. Fuck, I've gone way off topic. I'm so sorry. So the formlessness form aspect, I think the other part that I was kind of dealing with is the anxiety piece. So I had a medical leave request form that I had to give to Dr. Minjin's surgery medical staff, and it's due in 15 days, according to my corporate, blah, blah, blah. And I gave it to the surgery office, and they didn't reply that they got it or anything. And then 15 days went by, and they still didn't reply or send me anything back. And I told them very clearly there's 15 days due, and Bianca there said, hey, I'll get it back to you on time. And they didn't. And I lost a lot of sleep over it. And I started to get really, really anxious. I mean, like, what would you do if you have a surgery you've been waiting for years on the horizon? You need to get your medical leave paperwork done. And the corporation that you get the medical leave paperwork says you have 15 days to get this, and you never get a reply, and it's past due from the surgery office, right? What would you do? Like, how would you feel in that situation? So I was freaking stressing out, and I noticed what was happening in my body is there was this perception of like the worst outcome possible, which is I'm not going to get my surgery. And that's like a subconscious projection that I snap to, because when I get in anxiety mode, I'm attached to negative outcomes, because being attached to a negative outcome at least gives me certainty that there is an outcome, right? And it's the worst possible outcome. And then if it's the worst possible outcome, which is I'm not going to get my surgery, then it's going to give me anxiety, which is going to give me energy to then go fight to make a better outcome than the worst outcome. And so it's a tool that I use. So I've manufactured subconsciously to get shit done, because I don't want the worst possible thing to happen, which is no surgery. But I was losing sleep and not happy about it. And it's not a very healthy place to be about this. But this is what happens when I get triggered by like deep anxiety. I'm obsessive. I'm obsessive compulsive. Not the compulsive part, luckily, but I have OCD, the obsessive kind. And so I'm just looping over this thing over and over and over at like 3 o'clock in the morning and not sleeping. So I got up in the morning and I started to meditate, and I remembered the topic of this video, Formless Form, that the thing that I am attached to is a form. It's not real. It's a form, like something I have created and then attached to. So I simultaneously created the form, which is I'm not going to have surgery. I'm going to miss it. And then I've attached myself with this outcome and said, this is really like a true possibility of what can happen. And then I'm now having all of this anxiety happening because I'm attached to this thing. And it's an interesting concept to think about for you and how you're perceiving reality, because we create forms all of the time, everywhere. And some are so solid that you don't even question them most of the time. For example, a chair is a chair. Why do you need to question whether or not that's a chair or not? When you're a baby, it's not a chair. It's more formless. But when you're an adult, you're like, a chair is a chair. I sit on it. If it has a backrest and it's got like flat enough, you know, and maybe your perception's open enough that you find new chairs, right? Like if you look at a neat, like a shoe rack, and you sit on the shoe rack, you've made up a chair. Or you look at a sidewalk, you've made a chair, you know. It's all perception, right? Is it a bowl or is it a hat? Oh my God. Is it a dick or is it a joystick? Oh my God. I guess you could control men with it. It is kind of like a joystick. Oh my God, fuck. Is this what I do when I don't talk for a while? Welcome to my podcast. Would you be interested in a podcast, by the way? I was talking to Dr. Z about doing a podcast together, and we were like, yeah, let's do it. And I'll have had bottom surgery, and I'll be like sitting there on the bed, and we can have a podcast. The Vagina Chronicles. So the formless form. So when you have this attachment to this thing, you've created a form, you're attached to it, and you're creating a reaction to that, because you've created reality by saying this thing exists as a form in my mind reality, and I've created this association, and this is like close to a real reality right now. So therefore, I'm going to react to it accordingly. And then you generate stress, right? So the formless form is to go, oh, okay, like the form that exists is not that I'm going to be losing my surgery, that I'm not going to be having it, but just that the material form is my paperwork is out, it's past due, I've had no response. That's it. That's the base reality form, right? There's more form built on top of that. Well, because of this, I don't have that, and then, you know, like, and you spin out. And when you're thinking about things that you have anxiety about, this is like huge, right? This can transform your mindset and get rid of your anxiety. So maybe like if you have something that you have anxiety about, maybe we can just do a couple minutes meditation together, and I can take you through the process of it. Because this is going to help you put it into practice and really put it not into words and in your mind, but into feeling and in your body. So if you don't mind, we'll do this for like 2 or 3 minutes. Close your eyes and just think about something that you're anxious about. So I'm just going to think about something that I'm anxious about. Okay, so now that you've found that thing that you're anxious about, really feel that for a second. Just kind of feel the anxiety, feel the feeling of the attachment to the thing. Just feel it for a second. Really, really try and sense it with as many senses that you have. Make it as material as possible. Okay, so now you can feel it. Now, notice your attachment to it. Notice how hooked in it is, or how hooked in you are to it. And so now shift your attention to how attached you are to this thing that you're anxious about. Okay, do you feel your attachment to it? Now, instead of me saying, oh, just detach yourself, which is a Buddhism thing, which is also a way of doing it, what if we were to say this is just a form and that it can be formless? So allow your attachment and your perception of this form, allow this form some freedom to change its shape, to just be nothing, to be something but nothing, to be anything, to just be formless. And how I visualize this is I see, let's say, just like a cube or a rectangle, a cube maybe, and allow that cube to just become like white smoke, flowing liquid, maybe even like a lava lamp. Allow yourself to just have that imagery of this feeling. And when you look at it, just allow yourself to not project onto it, but just to allow seeing it taking a different shape and just constantly shifting and moving, like how a waterfall does, or how a lava lamp acts. So just watch let's do the lava lamp thing. Just watch the lava lamp for a second. So your form has melted down and it's just kind of flowing about. And now just observe your own feelings and attachment to this form that is now just flowing about. Breathe. So as you're just looking at this form, shifting about in its formless state, we can acknowledge that there is an essence to the form. There are some facts of reality that may exist that create the basis for this form. But there's a lot of it that's not actually real. There's a lot of reality that has been created on top of this base form that's not necessarily true. So allowing it to be formless, a formless form, can allow us to acknowledge the reality without projecting onto it what it means, rather what it is. So let's just let it be what it is, rather than what we think it should be. And just kind of sit there with it. Now, the one last thing that's beautiful about this, it can really calm your nervous system to just acknowledge that it's really just a lava lamp, and there's a formless form version of this form that we have anxiety about. And also, allowing it to be in this formless form allows us to avoid repeating prior behavior that has not helped us in the past. It allows us to react to it as if it is a new thing, to treat it like a new thing, to be curious about it. And with curiosity comes a new way of seeing things, new opportunities, and potentially better outcomes than how it has worked in the past. Just take it in one last time. Deep breath. And then that's it. So how was that for you? Felt great for me. So that's the practice of the formless form. You basically just turn everything into lava lamps. Everything is just there to be melted down. And that can help you change your how you're feeling right now, change your reality, change how you react to reality. You know, if you always get triggered or pulled into things, you're just going to be stuck in this self-fulfilling story where you just always create the prophecy that you're afraid of, right? Like, how many times have you done that to yourself, where you've just kind of created the thing that you're afraid of, or you've made it very hard on yourself because you've made it too hard? This is what I do all the time. I make things way too hard for myself. I'm working on it, though. I've done a lot better. Done a lot better recently. And bringing this into your body, bringing this formlessness into your body, into your nervous system, can really allow you to kind of like shapeshift, change form. And if we're going to go down the gender topic for a second here, if you're changing genders, it's like your gender is your form, you melt it, you turn yourself into a lava lamp, and then you shift, you recreate, you create a new version of who you are. And that goes down the Kung Fu route, the inner Kung Fu, which I talk about in my book. But the inner Kung Fu is kind of like, that's the magic, because now we're talking about inner alchemy. We're talking about the ability to take the things that you're attached to within yourself and shift them, because the substance is still there and you have limited capacity over like what your mind is capable of doing. So when you have forms in your mind that already exist, anxiety or just other things, you only have so much processing power. So if you melt down things that are wasted processing power, that's less efficient for what you need, such as for me, like changing my gender, getting rid of the gender problem, and it's still there, but like removing a large majority of the gender problem and chipping away at that gave me so much more energy to actually just shift some of that. Okay, so now we're just talking about energy, right? Like energy itself is kind of like the base form. So we have like material form where we talk about this surgery, medical leave paperwork, right? But then there's like energy behind that. And there's space in my mind that's just holding that concept, right? So if I strip away the material and I just have the energy has created a form. And if I dissolve that into formlessness, I can actually just abstract away everything and just have the latent energy and take that energy and shift it horizontally into a completely separate category, into a new vertical. So I could take that energy from that anxiety and put that into something else, like creating a video, painting, doing something else that has nothing to do. So then here we go. It's like, how do you take locked up energy and shift it into a place where it's better for you, that you can do something that makes you even happier? The formless form, it's like fucking so powerful. Like there's so much you can do with it because it's so abstract. Like it's a baseline operating feature of reality, I would argue, because everything is form and everything has an antithesis of that. Formless. It's the yin and yang. It's the Tao. It's what Buddhism talks about with detachment. It's I don't know if it's heaven. I can't say if it's heaven or not. Heaven seems like it's more of an attachment to an antithesis of like the pain and suffering in reality here. And you could say enlightenment is also that. And so I would almost argue that the concept of enlightenment is not true. Like the enlightenment that we talk about and that you hear about is the enlightenment that we can understand when we are attached to form, because no one wants to hear about a state that's formless and has nothing there, that it's just an ebb and flow of just being and presence and energy. People want to hear about, the promised land, the place where you feel great and happy. But that is a form in itself. And I would argue that that's probably not the truest state of like being. Like, let's say you do have a soul and spirit, because I know probably half of you don't believe in the soul or spirit. I do. And that's only because I've had enough out-of-body experiences to be like, oh yeah, like firsthand, like I've experienced my spirit out of my body enough times to go, yeah, definitely did go out of my body. So like, I'm like, all right, spirit exists. I don't fully understand it, but let's say spirit exists. Consciousness exists. Let's just say it does. You don't have to believe me here, but let's just say consciousness exists. And when you die, you still have some level of consciousness, right? Hell, in this concept, is your attachment to the fact that your consciousness is no longer with your body. Because you're now like, oh my God, my ego is dying. I am dying because all the things I'm attached to are going away, and now I'm in hell because I need control over, or I need to keep some kind of attachment to the form that I've invested in. And then the opposite would be, I'm not attached to any of this. It was just a form that I was flowing through. And somewhere in there is like this primordial state where you can experience all of the form and all of the formlessness just flowing and ebbing and being. Like imagine your pure consciousness, your pure energy is just existing in a state where it acknowledges it exists, and at the same time, it acknowledges that it does not exist. That's probably where you ultimately end up, and that's probably this collective consciousness that we speak of. And when I say we, I mean like humanity. There is a state that exists where it simultaneously acknowledges its own self and at the same time acknowledges that it is no self. And that's what I fucking love about Daoism, is Daoism is all about that, right? It's about the duality. And the duality is a bit mind-breaking, and that's kind of the point. It's why they speak in koans. Because like our brain is wired evolutionarily, I believe this, and I think it makes sense. We're evolutionarily wired to think in terms of form because that is survival, right? Like you need to understand a fruit is a fruit, a threat is a threat, and some sex is some sex, right? Pussy's a pussy, a dick is a dick, put that dick in that pussy. Or in my case, put it in my ass pussy. And so, like, this form and formlessness is it's a bit mind-bending and a bit mind-breaking. But doing this duality helps us escape the cycles that humanity is stuck in. And it can help you on a micro level escape your own cycles that you're stuck in. It's certainly been helping me get out of the cycles that I'm stuck in, to find a calmness, an awareness, and a happiness. So that's it for me. Tell me what you think. And if you'd like to support me, please join my channel. I use the money to help pay for making these YouTube videos, putting them together and all of that. I pay other trans people to help me do this. So if you can support me, that'd be great. I love you. Have a great day. Bye.